Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit.
Welcome to Magister Dixit, a podcast that invites you on a journey into realms of expertise, imagination, and occultism. Delve deep into the minds of those that have dedicated their lives to mastering their crafts, and how having an esoteric or supernatural influence has shaped that path. In each episode, we will engage with magisters, true masters of their respected fields, as they share their unparalleled insights, unconventional knowledge, and their unique perspectives. Venture into the mystical as we converse with filmmakers, musicians, and renowned authors. Listen to their perspectives on their respected disciplines and how being a practitioner of occultism has influenced their craft. Remember, in the realm of knowledge, Magister Dixit, the master has spoken. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Steve Intermill, the director of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magick, located in Cleveland, Ohio. Stephen has spent his entire life captivated by the occult and spiritual realms, leading him to curate one of the most fascinating collections of witchcraft artifacts in the country. The museum's enchanting walls house a unique cultural institution that stands as a beacon of heritage and mysticism. Visitors to the Buckland Museum can delve into the history, practices, and symbolism of witchcraft and magic through carefully curated exhibits. The museum showcases ancient rituals, tools, and myths presented in rotating galleries that ensure each visit offers something new and captivating. Join us as we explore Stephen's insights, experience, and the captivating wonders found at the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magick. Let's welcome Stephen to the show. Steve, welcome to Magister Dixit, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And to start everybody off, can you basically give a little synopsis of who Raymond Buckland is or was?
All right. Yeah. So my name is Steven Intermill. I'm the director of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft. And Ray Buckland came to the States in the 60s. He comes from London. He settles as in Long Island, New York, and he starts working as a copywriter. He's learning how to write. He's learning how to make money while he's doing it, which is huge if you want to be a professional writer. There's just something of a spiritual nature lacking. And he seeks, and what he discovers the work of Dr. Gerald Gardner, the founder of modern Wicca. Gerald Gardner writes about witchcraft. Well, Ray writes about witchcraft. Gerald Gardner has a witchcraft museum. Ray has a witchcraft museum. Gardner has a tradition of witchcraft. Ray develops his tradition of witchcraft. So you can see a lot of,
Parallels.
Yeah, it's almost like a blueprint that Gardner had that Ray took. So he founded his museum in the 60s, and I was really lucky enough to stumble upon it probably about 8 years ago, where I got to team up with members of his last coven, and we do it in partnership.
And how did you cross paths with them, Steve?
Well, I was working at a Christmas Story House, which is a local tourist destination here in Cleveland.
The Christmas Story House.
Yeah, so I was selling leg lamps for a living. And it was really great because not only was I the curator of the museum, I was also the head of the marketing department.
Okay.
But there's always that moment. Ray broke with the Gardnerian tradition of witchcraft, created his own. I broke with the leg lamp tradition of tourism, started my own. And I discovered I wrote Ray a letter, an email. He put me in touch with Tony. Tony, my partner that I mentioned before, she is so I own the business. She owns the collection. The business wouldn't be really much without that collection. So, facts are facts. So we teamed up, and that was about 8 years ago. We opened 7 years ago. And we've just had the ability to share, just kind of raise idea of having a magical museum that could kind of teach people what witchcraft is, what witchcraft isn't, show examples of it, and dispel some of the myths that people have about people that have magical thinking.
And part of the museum is being known for its anthropological approach to witchcraft, folklore,
Right.
and supernatural. And how does the museum's perspective in that way enhance the understanding and the appreciation of witchcraft and magic?
A lot of my guests coming in, they kind of expect it to be a freak show, like,
Right.
like puff of smoke. I come out, I'm like, whoa,
like a haunted house or something.
Yeah. I think a lot of my guests that come in, I mean, it's really hard. It's kind of hard to fathom what a witchcraft museum could possibly be. You know what I mean? Like, well, you were a guest. What were you expecting? Were you expecting what you got, or?
Well, of course, I did like a little web research, so I knew that you had like artifacts and things like that, and also that you had a revolving, depending on what time of the year it was, there could be some other exhibits there that they were like, interchangeable revolving exhibits going on as well at the museum. So, but and when you talk about like a museum like that, you're right. Like I don't really know of any other one. I always hear of the one in Iceland. They have
Oh
a
yeah,
witchcraft museum, and I think that's the one where they have like it's a whole body, a human bodysuit made of skin or something like.
the necro pants. Yeah.
Yeah, the necro pants. That always seems to grace the internet. You always come
Oh
across
yeah.
that on like Facebook or something like that,
Yeah.
But I had no preconceived notion, but I did appreciate the way that everything is curated, and that how did Raymond collect all of these artifacts?
Well, a lot of the things that we have were things that were owned by his friends. So, they're hanging out and he'd be like, hey, let me take that. I'll put it on display in my museum. And so there's a lot of things like that. He also worked for British Airways, so he could fly freely around the world. So he would go on expeditions buying things for the collection that way.
Nice.
So he was yeah, so he was picking things up. The Crowley pieces he had gotten from Israel Regarde.
I was just going to ask, what are some of the most notable or the collections housed at the museum?
So we do have some pieces that belong to the beast, Aleister Crowley. We have things, but I mean, it's extensive. Probably my favorite piece is one that came from within Ray's own coven, because we have the first American Wiccan high priestess's ritual headdress. It's called the circlet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a band with a crescent moon at the front of it. And to me, this is really the key piece of the collection, because when that was placed upon Rosemary Buckland / Rowan, first American high priestess, when that was placed upon her head, this splits the atom that creates the occult explosion of the 60s.
Right.
And I think that is such a beautiful.
And it's
I wish I could have been there.
And it's particularly associated with Raymond himself. That's what makes it such like the prestige of it, And
Oh yeah. I mean, Ray was definitely a important part of the whole history. So I feel really blessed that I got to know him for about a year and a half before he passed.
Now, to talk a little about the coven that he had here in America, that was in Long Island.
Yeah, it was called the Long Island Coven. I guess it didn't really have like a fancy name to it. A lot of times covens today would be called like, I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, something
the mugwort and the mugwort and thorn.
Something very
coven.
cool, yeah.
Yeah, but back then it was just, well, it was the coven, and then it was the Long Island Coven, or even the New York Coven. And that was just a group of people that he very kind of slowly developed from the early 60s. And then he left that coven in the early 70s, formed his own tradition of witchcraft. But it's my understanding he was still involved with Gardnerian witchcraft in various ways until he died. It's the kind of thing that, you know, you can never really leave, I think, if you really love it.
Did he correspond, and had he ever met with Gerald Gardner?
Yeah, he corresponded with Gardner, and I guess he may have overlapped a little bit of time with Gardner on the Isle of Man
Okay.
right before Gardner passed. So, yeah, he was truly Gardner's protege here in the United States. We have letters in the archives from Gardner to Ray, and Ray's real relationship, much more sincere, was with Gardner's high priestess, Monique Wilson, and her husband, Scotty. And they're really the ones that taught Ray and Rosemary how to be Robat and Rowan, their craft names. So,
And with such a tradition coming down from Gardner, how was Raymond's witchcraft different than Gerald Gardner's? What were the distinctions or the significant differences?
to be honest, that'd be impossible for me to answer because I wasn't really there.
Okay.
But Gardner set up the blueprint for Gardnerian witchcraft.
Well, I just didn't know if it was a departure in thought from maybe what,
Well,
in the way that a Michael Aquino kind of took a different path than, LaVey or something like that type of thing.
I wouldn't say like a different path, like the Kino LaVey split, but more. Ray eventually founded a traditional witchcraft called Seax Wicca, and it's really kind of interesting because this is kind of a non-denominational kind of Wicca. They do things that must have just seemed just completely outlandish at the time, where the high priest and the high priestess were interchanged every year or so. So that way you wouldn't have tops of pyramids forming. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, the priesthood of the coven would change. There were no secret names for gods or goddesses, nothing that anybody could hold over anyone and saying, because I think Ray felt like that could potentially become a problem.
Yeah, the whole outer circle and then inner circles.
Yeah, all that stuff just gets messy. So with their type, there was no kind of like hierarchy, or there was a hierarchy, but it was a rotating hierarchy, which I think is really healthy.
Yeah. No, it sounds very that he kind of went out of his way, I think, like with the appointment of different members each year, like you said, to kind of break up any type of monopoly maybe on the organization.
Yeah, which I
could
appreciate.
As the director of the museum, what are your primary responsibilities and goals for the institution?
Keep it going. Wake up every day and just move forward. It's always something new. Today we had a meeting with some things that we might do some business with some people we might do some business with out in Chicago. It's always something kind of fresh. Find artists to create merchandise. Talk my wife into paying the electric bill because I can't do it. I'm just very ADD, so it's like that kind of executive task kind of is terrible for me. I get to be kind of the face of the museum, which it's.
Could you walk us through the process of like how you curate like an exhibit, or how like maybe like how do you seek out the revolving exhibits and everything? Like, is that something that
you seek out, or is it more like people approaching you guys, or how does that work out? Do you have somebody that specifically works on that for the organization?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, it really depends. Sometimes people come knocking. We just had a beautiful exhibit. Laura D'Alessandro, she's a local artist, where she did these really cool lenticular works. They were up for the last couple of months. I'm currently working on an exhibit, which actually will be on display for the public on Friday. And this is work from a gentleman named Michael Bertiel out of Chicago. And this exhibit, most of the pieces are things from my own personal collection that I've picked up from him over the years. But then he's also donated things to the Buckland Museum. And so some of those pieces, there is a piece that he donated to the Museum of Witchcraft in Cornwall, England, that, I said to Simon, the director over there, I was like, all right, I'm going to send it to you, but how about we show it at this exhibit first? So this should be an extraordinary selection. I think people are going to love it. And yeah, I mean, that one was easy because a lot of the pieces are my own personal pieces, things that I've collected over the years. So this is, you throw them on the wall. Well, you place them on the wall
Yeah,
and try
I've
to have people enjoy them.
and I've been throughout doing the podcast, and a lot of my guests, when I mention the museum, if they haven't heard of it, they're like, wow. And I had to kind of give them a lot of info about it, and where, how to check it, where to go to check it out and everything on the web. And the ones that did were already pretty well acquainted with you, and talked about maybe perhaps even like bringing some of their artwork from Europe over to maybe exhibit over at the museum.
All right, so let's see. Just from people I've noticed, you've spoken with my friend Hagen out in
Yeah, so that's what I was
Berlin.
talking about with the artwork too. And
Yeah,
I was my interview with him, I was saying how cool it would be if he brought like one of those resonators over. Like, you ever see the resonator he does, the big
yeah,
artwork with where you put your hands up and
yeah,
everything, And
yeah.
I thought that would be really cool and something really interactive that would be neat.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Hagen, it's great. And then I think you interviewed Carl.
Yes, Carl Abrahamson. Yes.
So Carl, I visited with him last summer. I went to see him in the small town kind of between Gothenburg and Stockholm that he lives with his wonderful spouse, Vanessa.
Yeah, and Carl is such a great filmmaker. I
Oh
thoroughly
yeah.
enjoy his documentaries on Kenneth Anger and Anton LaVey, and
Well, he donated a photograph that he had taken of Kenneth Anger. I think it was in 1989. So yeah.
that's great. That's great, and I guess that's what I mean is like the Buckland Museum is engaged with like that worldwide magical community, and I was really impressed with that. And how does do you engage with the local community?
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, Laura D'Alessandro, she's a local artist. And every day there's a witch from down the street that comes in, hangs out and sees us. So we get people from all over, but it's always really cool when the witches from down the block come see us too.
Absolutely. And do you do any type of educational initiatives or programs that would maybe engage visitors and promote the understanding of witchcraft and magic in the way that Raymond would have wanted?
Yeah, we do have lectures all the time. We have one April 6th. I don't know if you're going to post this before or after that, but it should be it's our friend Solomon who's going to do a lecture on modern Mayan magic. He is of Mayan descent, has Mayan ancestry, and he will be teaching us some secrets of that tradition. Um, let's see. This Saturday, I'm going to go to the Cleveland Public Library And I've been working on a lecture about folklore and eclipses. So that's not at the museum, but that's at, the Cleveland Public Library. So it's kind of a big deal.
You got that total eclipse coming up here very shortly, don't we?
Yeah, and everybody's really excited about the total eclipse. And I don't know, as a magician, as a magical practitioner, do you really want to embrace something whose the word itself, eclipse, comes from Greek, and it's to abandon, to darken, to cease to exist?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
So,
totally devoid of light.
yeah. Yeah.
And in ancient times, the omen that would represent to, the mankind at that time, and not being really able to maybe only look at it in godlike perspectives and not in a scientific perspective at all.
Well, yeah. It's like you and I, we can understand it as a, we can understand it as a scientific phenomenon. But I mean, I should pull out some of my Jung books and see what he thought about the eclipses, because this is the complete overtaking of the self with the shadow.
Right.
Which I think that's, you gotta respect your shadow, but don't let it take over, right?
Yeah, and we did in the beginning of the podcast just kind of jump right into about Raymond Buckland and the museum and everything, but let's talk a little about your history. And you were originally from Ohio, and then what happened? Did you move to New York and then New Orleans or something like that? Or?
Yeah, I lived in Ohio, moved to New York at some point, formed a great band with my friend Matthew, and it was called Occult Powers. And we had a pretty decent following of people into like noise and electronic music, experimental music. The band still exists to this day, but we don't play as many gigs as we used to back then. And some point, New York City got a little tiresome for my spouse, Jillian, and I.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to New Orleans. And then after a while, I mean, you gotta love New Orleans, but it's kind of no place to be if you're a Yankee. I'm into punctuality and things like that. And I mean,
It's different lifestyle.
Drill, so we moved up to Cleveland, where I've been for a number of years. So I've got into some forms of magic, a little more heavily than I was when I was in New York. In New Orleans as well, experimental with a lot of things. There's a heavy voodoo scene down there.
So it's a totally different magic vibe,
Yeah, there's also like a heavy ceremonial magic scene down there, as well as a witch scene. And I was part of all that. And then, because it's like pretty much my magical traditions before that had leaned kind of more heavily towards like chaos magic. And I was also very interested in the work of Kenneth Grant and Michael Bertio up into, for probably like the mid 90s. And then when I moved to Cleveland, kind of like put that stuff on a back burner until all of a sudden the museum started forming. And now I've kind of gotten more interested in things like traditional Wicca, as well as traditional, I don't know, ceremonial magic, I guess.
And the whole role of with the museums kind of brought you back into that whole realm of you'd say you're a practicing magician, or?
Yeah. I mean, the magic's always there. And a lot of my magic tends to deal with kind of like more like traditional witchcraft, and also like Wiccan witchcraft.
And what have been some of the most personally meaningful experiences for you during your time at the museum?
Just the people that come in.
Yeah.
I meet cool people all day. And maybe some people that aren't that cool, but they're interesting. Like maybe some people I feel relieved when they leave, but I
Right.
wouldn't trade the time that I spent with them. And some people can be a bit intense, but I love it. So you took a tour, and I imagine I was the tour guide.
Yes. Yes. It was great.
So would you say that I'm enthusiastic?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you greet everybody that came in, very cheerfully and everything, and it was a very inviting atmosphere. And me being the question person that I am, you didn't mind answering
Oh, good.
all my questions and stuff.
Good. Yeah.
And you allowed me to take pictures too. Like, you were really cool with that. You were just like, yeah, go ahead.
Just no flash.
Yeah. And that was a nice aspect, because so many places it's just like, no photography.
Yeah. No. Hundreds, thousands of photos have been taken there. And sometimes I just get annoyed when somebody posts like 700 photos that they took at the museum. Like, come on,
Yeah.
do a good edit,
Yeah, exactly. Just not a photo dump.
Yeah. And then so the photo dumps are usually just, oh gosh, why are they doing that?
Now, is this the second location that the museum has been at?
Yeah, we started off in my friend's record shop, and it was pretty cool. It was in a room in the side of a record shop, and the guy specialized in psychedelic records. So kind of went hand in hand.
Sure.
And that was great. And then let's see. Some point somebody did a tarot reading for me that I wasn't really, they didn't tell me that they were doing a reading of. They just called me up one day and they said, "So what's going on?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, I did a reading with you and I pulled the tower. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, first of all, maybe you should ask for my consent to do a reading. And first of all, consent. Second of all, there's nothing in my life that would be tower worthy." And then the next day, this guy came in. He was like this yuppie dude. It was like a movie, like an 80s movie where the guy's like, "Yeah, man, I bought the building, kicking out the record store, but you guys could stay." And I'm like, "Listen, Slick, no, you cannot mess with my friends like that. Expect me to be cool with it." And that's
Right.
where I found our current location. And this has actually been perfect for us because it's not, it's quite a bit larger than where we were. It's still not massive. I
Mhm.
think people want like a really massive place, but this is the size I need it to be because I can run the place without anybody else there,
Yeah. Well,
which is easy.
that's what I was going to ask, with all of the collaborations and upcoming projects and everything. Uh, do you find yourself that you keep collecting things, and so maybe uh, with that accruement of so much stuff that sometimes you have to maybe think of going to a larger place. Has it gotten to that point yet where you got a lot of stuff and you don't know how to get everything up that you want to have up? Or
Yeah, it's just I can't find a space that's larger, so I can't sit there and dwell on it. I'm always actively looking,
but
but
the potential is there to expand the museum to even larger capacity.
yeah, if I could find a building that was bigger, that was functioning, that still had a roof, but still looked decrepit, that'd be
Right.
great. But I there's been talk about moving it into like a strip mall,
Hmm.
someplace where we'd have the square footage. But
It's not really the right home for it,
no
right?
magic in that. Yeah, we could do things. My friend Jin had a beautiful shop in Phoenix that was in a strip mall. It was called Zombie World Market.
Hmm.
He closed it to move to Paris, but you know, there's potential in that sort of thing. But
Yeah,
I'd
just
much
like
rather.
a museum in a strip mall. I could understand
Yeah,
you're reserving yourself for like, uh, maybe like an old bank building or something like that with a big vault or something
yeah,
cool,
exactly.
like I think that something like that's more fitting for that type of so when you're
Yeah.
looking at magical artifacts from the 19th century and stuff, it's
So I feel like one of those places out there for us. We just need to find it. Sometimes I think about moving out of the city of Cleveland, but to be honest, I'm addicted to that like large city tourism traffic that I get already. So
sure. And how do you envision the museum evolving in the coming years?
uh just kind of hopefully filling in some gaps that we have in the collection, hopefully getting bigger at some point. But I like in ways I don't want to see too much of a drastic evolution. I'm afraid of growing too much where we lose the personal touch that we have.
Mm. Do you want
You
to
know,
maintain that you doing the tours and
me or somebody else that's just as excited about it.
right,
You
but
know, it's
to have that genuine authenticity, you want to maintain that.
yeah. I mean, because I have to imagine that part of the thing that you liked about the tour was that there was somebody there that was excited to tell you about the things, and
Yeah, like you weren't like it was very inviting.
yeah, it's we could do a thing. I got a lot of stuff that I have to work on and stuff. And there's been talk about maybe one day a week. Maybe it's just self-guided. But I don't know. I want to have fun with that, you
Yeah,
know, and I don't think my guests would have the fun with it. So
and
I want to keep that kind of magic to it.
we had come out just after COVID. How did you guys deal with the people coming to the museum during the COVID?
Well, the best thing about COVID is it taught me actually how to do a tour. Because before COVID, it was just kind of show up whenever, come on in. I'd give you a couple seconds of an introduction, point out some things, tell you a couple stories. But then COVID happened. We actually had to limit the amount of people that could come in at a time. And then I learned how to give a structured tour. And then after I learned how to give a structured tour, then all of a sudden people started really liking their tours. And
You enhanced
so,
the experience.
oh, yeah. And still to this day, I keep it to a limited amount of people that come in and take tours. And sometimes that's disastrous for me because people get very upset. People think that if I don't let them in for a tour, it's a personal thing, but it's not. It's a you know, when they eventually come for a tour, they'll have a much better experience. And I
Great.
don't want to deny that from anyone. I just don't want it to be a cattle call kind of thing. And so that's been kind of a problem, but I'm not going to budge from it anytime soon, just because I think it's important for people to hear the history of the museum.
Right.
And museums are keepers of the history. So my introduction, I think it's very important for me to give that to people, and I can't really do it with more people than what I let in now. So yeah, so there was good things and bad things about it, but I mean, we kind of thrived during COVID and after. It's attendance was up. after COVID because people were like, "Oh my gosh, let's do it." And actually, it slowed down a little bit. I think talking to one of my friends that owns another local tourist spot in the Cleveland area, we're like, probably never going to see 2022 numbers, anytime soon.
Just because
But
the floodgates had been opened,
yeah,
and everybody
but
was back out and about.
that being said, none of us could do another 2022 year. It was just too nuts. It was just too busy. So,
And I noticed also, like, I try to, when I, Cleveland's about 3 hours from here. And when I came out, I made point of what other things could we do while we're out there? Of course, there's always great record stores in Cleveland. So,
oh
I
yeah,
made a plan to hit the record stores, but also the cemetery not far from there was a really interesting place too, where Elliot Ness is. And
Lakeview, yeah.
yeah, I forget the name of it or whatever, but it was there was a lot of I want to say celebrities buried there as well. So we kind of did a walk around there, and then I believe there's a medical museum there of
The
like
Dittrich Museum, yeah.
yes, and also there was another one with oh, it's like, I think I want to say it was like a rail car or whatever, and the rail car actually, like, I don't know, there was like some kind of like horrible accident that was involved with it and stuff. But I guess I'm saying it was a very it was a very, like, a lot of uh curated, interesting sights to see in Cleveland. And
Oh yeah.
you know
Cleveland's a great place for spooky tourism, that's for sure.
yeah, and that's kind of been in Americana now. Kind of like, I think the niche little shops and museums and stuff. Are you in touch with any of the other kind of like cottage museums in the country? Not so much just witchcraft, but like I don't know, places like maybe like Grayface Museum, or what is it? Is it the Murder Museum in LA, or I
A
have a
little
little.
bit. The first one you mentioned, we actually share a mutual friend with a friend of mine. He is a Satanist lawyer, and he is a real hoot. Uh,
Grayface
yeah,
Museum.
there is, and there's kind of a network of us. There's the International Museum of the Paranormal down in Kentucky. That place is, I've never been, but the people that run that are very sweet. And then,
There's the Warren Occult Museum in
oh yeah, yeah,
Monroe, Connecticut.
everything's blamed on witches there.
And there's the Mystic Museum.
Oh yeah, I've been out to the Mystic Museum in Los Angeles. That was actually I don't know if the guy's that excited to promote this, but he actually is from Parma, Ohio, where I live. So
Parma, nice.
yeah, so he's a Parma guy. I think he was a Parma guy. And the one time I was out there, they were actually closed for renovation. They were switching out an exhibit. So
And then there's also the Museum of Death in Hollywood, and I think there's one in New Orleans now too.
there's a Museum of Death in New Orleans but there's a place in Detroit that I'm actually really interested in going to sometime. It is called the Anatomy of Death Museum.
Interesting.
And the guy that runs that sounds like a real kook, like in a good way. Like,
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah.
I don't want him to hear this and be like,
And there's the
He
Zach
says I'm a
Baggins
kook.
out in Vegas, the Haunted Museum out there. I wanted to get to it the last time I was out there. I play in a metal band, and we got to play in Vegas, and I wanted to break away to go to do that real quick, and I just didn't get the opportunity. So
got to sign a waiver there, right?
yeah, the Bela Lugosi mirror, and
Oh,
but I like all that kind of creepy, spooky stuff, and it's always nice to find an occult shop. I'm originally from New York, and as a kid, the only place we could go would be Magical Child in New York City. So we
Oh,
would,
very cool. Yeah.
we would go there towards the tail end of its existence, and
Did we have any of the Magical Child pieces up on display while you were here?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Because our friend Amy C. Wilson, she owns a shop called Otherworldly Waxes. It's in upstate New York. And when Magical Child went out of business, the owner of the business at the time bought out a bunch of the old herb containers, herbs, that sort of thing. And she donated an incredible array of Magical Child pieces to us.
Wow.
One of the absolute favorite things that we have is a red plastic bag from the Magical Child. So yeah, I wandered in there. You're a metal guy, so you'd like this. I went to see Guar
Right on.
in the real early 90s play at the Ritz in New York. And I wandered into the Magical Child while I was there, and I purchased the Thoth tarot deck from them.
Wow.
And that was my first tarot deck. And
And that's the one with the OTO address on the back for Grady
It's the-
McMurtry.
Yeah. So it's just kind of funny because Herman Slater, the owner of the Magical Child, was actually the guy who came up with the old lore. You have to be gifted your first tarot deck. But
Yeah, you can't buy it. Somebody has to give it to you.
according to Herman Slater, but Herman was a scoundrel, and he just assumed that means that two people would be in his shop instead of one person. So I bought my first tarot deck at a place that was the people that popularized the idea that you couldn't, which I thought was kind of strange and awesome.
And just as a kid going in there, he would be selling skulls, and then he'd have this big Necronomicon in there that was like, leather bound and, looked so serious and authentic and everything. And then, like you said, all the jars with all of the herbs and the different things,
I have one of those right over here. Let's see. Is it up here?
And one of my previous guests, Peter Lavenda.
Oh yeah.
I had pressed him about if he was Simon, the author of the Necronomicon, and he denied that, but he really gave us a very interesting story about his association with that document and with Herman and how it got to the Magical Child and was released.
Yeah. Much to
And
everybody.
the story contains stolen manuscripts, some monks that were going into libraries and stealing books and ripping pages out of manuscripts and then selling them on the black
for those
market.
wandering bishops. Yeah.
And what was also nice about going to the museum, just to go back to that, is the shop part of the museum as well. I enjoyed the memorabilia that you had there, the posters, the T-shirts, and everything. And who designs all of that stuff?
I get a lot of different people that do different work for us. It's Tony and I, we spend a lot of time talking about, who's going to do the next poster, who's going to do the next design. It's kind of like an important part for both of us to do it, but we don't have like one person that does everything for us.
And then I have a few of those little they're almost like little foldable periodical things that you were.
Oh yeah! Oh, you got some of our zines? That's
yes,
cool.
yes, I got a few of those.
Nice.
Yeah, I had ordered some stuff. I ordered some merch from you guys last year too, and you stuffed the package and all sorts of goodies. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very much appreciated.
Sometimes I feel really generous when I'm stuffing envelopes.
Yeah. And have you ever been asked to have the museum featured on any type of television series or anything like that?
Yeah. There's a notorious episode of us on mysteries at the museum. It's really not my proudest one.
Mm-hmm.
They I mean, I think under contract I'm not really allowed to like really talk about it too much. But yeah, I mean, we've been on an episode of Mysteries on the Museum. But other than that, I don't know. It's a couple of people have asked about some other shows, but we've respectfully declined. It's not really. A lot of that stuff is just really sensational and kind of just
Doesn't really bring the type of doesn't shed the light on the museum and that maybe you want shed on it.
yeah. I mean, it can be just kind of
You don't want to display it as like a freak show or something for like
yeah, because it's not. It's a
right.
sincere exploration of belief and not I mean, I know that like a lot of the paranormal shows and stuff have really been helpful to people and really bring people together. And I don't want to dismiss any of that, but a lot of it is exploitation and not like exploitation and like you seem like you're probably of an age when you think of exploitation, you think of like psychotronic and it's kind of like fun, weird stuff. But this is like exploitation of manipulating people's like emotions in a way that I think is very bizarre. And I kind of going off on a weird tangent here, but I tend to avoid media depictions of what we do.
Right. Understood. Because you usually an inaccurate description anyway.
Yeah.
And has anyone ever considered writing a book about Raymond Buckland?
Yeah, there's one being written right now. It's our friend Jason Mankey. He is actually can trace his lineage of witchcraft initiation to Ray in New York City. And he's taken Ray wrote kind of an outline of an autobiography. It didn't really flesh it out. So he's using that as kind of the skeleton of it. And he is building an a biography on Ray, which hopefully will be out next year.
Great. I'm sure you'll be doing something at the museum when that happens.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be great. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are any of the artifacts or any maybe things that you have contributed to the information towards that autobiography?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Jason that, but he spent a number of days in the museum. We let him take a peek at the archives. So there's correspondence in there that
That's what I was going to ask. Do you have like correspondence letters?
Oh yeah, letters from Ray to Gardner, Gardner to Ray, Ray to Monique Wilson, Ray to various other witches writing Ray. So it's interesting snapshots of communication.
Now,
And
I know Gerald Gardner had met and had correspondence with Aleister Crowley. Did Ray Buckland have any correspondence with Crowley, or
no? Ray would have been like
was the age just not? It's
yeah, he would have been like 14 years old or something.
Yeah, so not quite really
12 years old when Crowley died. So he would have missed that. And Ray wasn't a big Crowley guy, but he definitely acknowledged Crowley's influence on Wicca and modern witchcraft and just kind of the explosion of the occult in general. So going through Ray's address book.
Really?
Now that is cool because everybody's in it. Like all the old school witches are in it. But
Wow.
like I said, he had bought some things from Israel Gardi, so he's in there. Uh
Well, he was a psychotherapist in California, wasn't he?
yeah, until he moved to Sedona. And yeah, so his Los Angeles address was in there. It's just really, really cool.
Yeah, and all this before the internet and electronic records keeping. Like this was all like genuine, Rolodex info.
Yeah. And
Old
honestly,
school.
like it's a it's a thrill because when I first looked at this address book 8 years ago,
Mhm.
I knew some of the players in this, but then years later going through it, like, oh my gosh, everybody's in here.
Yeah, so the broader your scope is in the history of the players. And
Yeah.
now you go back and you go, oh, there's that person, and here's that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's somewhat a commonality among people who have an interest in the occult or the esoteric. Yeah, you tend to gobble up everything at first until you find maybe your own particular path, or like you'll delve into everything, but maybe you won't stay with you're on to the next thing looking or whatever. And a lot of people, first book they'll pick up, maybe it'll even be the Anton LaVey's books, or it's Crowley or Blavatsky, and as an occultist, you end up knowing somewhat a little about all of those people, and in your quest for wanting to know more about magic, you kind of investigate all the different players and the
Oh yeah.
aspects and everything, and I had Ronnie Pontiac on the show, and he was Manly P. Hall's personal assistant and lecturer and everything. And when I had asked him about Manly P. Hall, and he had all those books. He had them under lock and key, and he believed that he felt the power of them should be taken seriously, and they shouldn't really be used, and things like that. So he had a reverence for all of these different magicians and their books.
Yeah. So Manly Pete Hall did?
Yes.
Oh wow, how cool is that? I just
Yeah, he had all Crowley's books under lock and key. And what was neat also is like Ronnie would be having lunch with him, and he'd have him like, hey, pull out this tube here, pull out this parchment, and they'd like undo it. And it would be like some really important alchemical document that Ronnie had only heard about, and here they are, like, going over it at lunch.
oh wow. Yeah, I mean, we all get to live the life of Riley in some ways, right?
Yeah, I guess it's like when you're into this particular thing, you're aware of, like, even if you don't agree with them, you're aware of all of the other people that are out there and stuff.
Well, that's the thing, is there's a lot of people out there not agreeing with other people with what they're doing and that sort of thing. But to be honest, I mean, there's more people that are doing similar things than non-similar in the end.
Very true. It's like I've even interviewed several different left hand path people, and each one has been so uniquely, the viewpoints have been so uniquely different than the others, and yet you wouldn't really, and they were so different in their belief systems, yet under all the same umbrella of like left hand path belief system. And I don't think the average person would realize that there's so much splintered diversity within all of these belief systems.
So when you talk about left-hand path people that you've interviewed, let's see, my guess is probably like Don Webb,
I've had Don on. Yeah, I've had Martin McGregor, E.A. Coetting, which kind of pissed a lot of people off too. But I like to interview everybody.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, you gotta talk to everyone else. You don't know.
I got Stephen Flowers coming on next week.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I wouldn't say don't talk to Stephen Flowers, even though some people would definitely tell you not to. It's and that's ridiculous. But yeah,
And it's the same. There's a lot of, infighting with under the umbrella of Thelema as well.
oh yeah. I mean, anything. We have more similarities than we do. The thing that freaks me out the most about this is especially Bray was known for Wicca, and he didn't really use that term a lot. He just used witchcraft. But I mean, Wicca was kind of like a blanket term that was put upon him. So you got a lot of people that have opinions about Wicca, and they disparaging opinions about this and that. But in the end, I mean, we're all witches. Even if you're a ceremonial magician, they'll still hang you like everybody else.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't really, in the podcast, just trying to reflect what's out there, who's out there,
Yeah.
doing their thing, and then just see the combativeness. Like when you post certain people, it's just like, okay, here we go, I'm like,
You have people out there.
And music's become a lot like that now too. You can't be into a band like Burzum, otherwise, people want to shut you down.
Yeah. All I know is like with the occult, you get oh, I don't like this kind of occultism, I don't like that kind of occultism. But at some point in probably the near future, they're going to start rounding up occultists. And when they do, they're not going to care if you're this kind of witch or that kind of witch. Or if you don't like Wicca or you don't like this, they're just going to hang us all. So we should figure out ways to stick together more than not.
Absolutely, definitely words of wisdom that definitely I think could improve the dynamic amongst the different practices.
Yeah, I hear certain beatings of drums out there that I find very concerning for all of us. And I think it's probably time for people to kind of give up on differences like that and try to focus on survival for the knowledge that we've gained.
And a few of my guests have also suggested that we may indeed be due for another satanic panic type of kind of
Yeah, to say the least. I could see that
of a different nature, but
I would assume that you probably knew Jim Kanye.
Sure, of course.
Yeah,
from the Minch days too, the early days. Our first 7-inch was on Seraphic Decay Records, which was from Cleveland.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
a friend of Jim's.
One time I picked up Jim. He was like, "Hey man, we got to go Shattered because I got to buy some Minch 7-inches because I ran out of them, and somebody from Japan ordered a bunch of them. So we had to go to Shattered." And it was kind of fun listening to Frank be a real jerk about like selling these records back to Jim, like raising the price on them and stuff. And Jim just be like, fine, I got to make sure that these hit the Japanese market.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, he was definitely a very influential dude, and everybody knew him in the scene too.
Yeah, he was great. When he passed, that was a just devastating loss for so many people. So for my wife, for me, knew him forever. And
the mayor of Parma.
Oh yeah, truly the mayor of Parma. And I love the fact that like he would travel the world and people would ask him where he's from, and he'd say Parma, Ohio, not Cleveland. For anybody listening to this, Parma is like the largest suburb of Cleveland. and but always in Cleveland shadow. But Jim would not let that happen.
And he was a Steelers fan.
Oh yeah, which was really fun because Browns country, all that nonsense, and
No
he would
doubt.
just love to annoy people with the Steelers
Oh,
stuff.
Phantasmagoria was another club.
Phantasmagoria.
It was like, it's almost like in that same neighborhood as Now That's Class or whatever. I think it's like maybe a couple blocks down from it.
Wow.
It was upstairs. They had like that big boat kind of like thing in there or whatever.
Oh no, the fantasy.
I'm sorry, it was the Fantasy. Okay.
I'm like,
Fantasy.
this guy has stumped me. And
Right, but is the Fantasy right over by Now That's Class, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of great shows there. In the fantasy compound, I mean, the first real show I ever saw was Sonic Youth with Death of Samantha there. I remember seeing the Ramones, Butthole Surfers, etc. downstairs from there. Around the corner from there was a place called, the Symposium, where I saw White House play in like 1993, which was like such a pivotal moment for my head, seeing like such a legendary band. So, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, definitely. Cleveland's definitely a fun place for shows and stuff like that. And the museum just made it like one other stop for me when I go to Cleveland,
So, how did you discover the occult there in Johnstown, Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm originally from New York, and that would probably just be
So, New York City?
yeah, just outside of it in Orange County, so about 50 miles outside of New York, in Middletown, New York.
By the time you got the chance, you would go into the city,
Yeah,
walk around the
for
village,
records, and
go
go
to
to Magical
records.
Child, go to Forbidden Planet for comic books.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So it's not like the way it used to be, right?
No, when I go back, it's like, glad I don't live here anymore.
Yeah, I was in New York for the Cult Humanities Conference last October. And even in like the 5 years since the previous Occult Humanities Conference that I'd been to, it had changed. Just changes every time I go, and never in a more bohemian, laid back kind of way.
No, and right now it's like paramilitary craziness, like on the subways.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. It's just I don't know. I don't know.
Not the kind of vibe I want to live in,
Yeah, I like living in the Midwest these days. It's I don't know.
Yeah. Where can everybody go on the web to find out?
Oh, that's right. We're still doing an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, come find. I feel like this talking. Buckland Museum is our website. You could find the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft on Facebook. Just search for it. Our Instagram's usually pretty active. I post on there a couple times a week. Buckland Museum. Um, let's see. I got a Threads. I never post on that. Every once in a while, I have something dumb to post. I'll post it on our Twitter.
What are the
Buckland
hours?
Museum.
Are you guys open 7 days a week or
Right now, we're open 4 days a week because
4
I
days?
work 6 days a week most of the year.
Okay.
And then from January to like beginning of May, it's only 4 days a week because I get so burnt out, just like working 6 days a week, which is really 7 days of work week, because on that seventh day I have to do all my ordering and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Beltane, that'll be when I'll be 7 days a week or 6 days a week, always Wednesdays off. Statistically my slowest day anyway, so why bother being
Cool.
open? And feel free to email me if you have any questions about it, bucklandmuseum.org. Our business phone number is my cell phone, so you can call me at any time. I'll answer your questions. I love sharing the museum. Tony loves what we do. I love what we do. It's definitely the passion I think exudes through anything. And the thing is it's a museum. So a lot of the stuff we talk about, what's on display, But I'm always curious about you, the guest. So feel free to tell me your stories when you come in. Tell me about what you're interested in, who you're interested in, because I'm always seeking new things for the museum. And the thing is, I mean, Robert, you know this. You've been in the cult for a real long time, and you think that you know everything about everyone, and then people give you a pathway that you go down. You find out about just like a weird corner, like WYRD weird, that you would never have discovered if just not somebody had mentioned it. So please come in, tell me your occult stories, tell me what you're interested in, because I'm listening.
That's awesome. Steve Intermill, the director of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft, located in Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you very much for coming on Magister Dixit. And maybe sometime we'll have you back again. Maybe we could do. I'm hoping maybe to go from audio podcast to a video podcast. Who knows? Maybe next season we could even do the podcast from the museum.
I'd love that. That sounds good.
I would love that too. Thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, thank you. So mote it be.
Take care.